As always, before we get started, let me just stress how important it is that you watch or listen to the entire show. We're going to delve into multiple topics of conversation that is pertinent to us. We must have color vision. By listening to the entire show, you're less likely to take stuff out of context, less tempted to cherry pick things to disagree with me on. Like I always say, fact checkers will check and haters will hate. You may get tired of hearing me say this, but just to be clear, when we talk about the issues affecting African Americans and people of color, we're not doing it to exclude others. We're doing it to focus on our issues. African Americans and people of color are the ones who way too often are adversely affected by certain issues. This should go without saying, but I put it out there anyway. One other thing, I want to remind everyone to please share the YouTube link to this show with everyone you know and those you don't know. If you like what you see and hear, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, please like us and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. I like to start each show by trying, and I always stress the word trying, to take the pulse of our nation. If you're a regular listener or viewer, you know that I think that America doesn't really act like, behave like it's one distinct individual nation, the mythical melting pot. America acts more like it's made up of multiple nations within a nation based upon race, ethnicity, religion, etc. And there are times when I ask myself, are we as a people progressing? Are we stagnant? Are we regressing? What is our vision? We need color vision. The other day, I saw an online news headline post that showed a photo of a group of DACA dreamers. The thing that stood out to me about the photo and the article is that every person pictured was very accomplished. They were like 18 to 24-year-old college students, civil servants, corporate America types. Outstanding. But it made me think, and while I realize that it's not an apples to apples comparison, but why is it that people of color seem to have to be like supermen or superwomen? Essentially the best of the best out of their group, out of their race, out of their ethnicity, their religion, in order to simply be recognized as valuable members of American society. Why can't they be average, mediocre, and still be readily accepted? Why can't they be barely getting by on the lower rung of accomplishments and still be readily accepted? I wonder if those who now control the legislative and executive branch even have a clue about the teachings in the book of Leviticus when they have their discussions about immigration policy. It says something like, you should remember that you, yourselves, you too were once foreigners. Well, now they've essentially said that the U.S. is no longer wanting to accept new immigrants who intend to do menial labor types of jobs. Sheesh. Got to be a rocket scientist, I guess, to make it in. The moral to the story is, the other day I was listening to Dr. Wilmer Leon. He had a guest on his show who was a very accomplished African-American man who came from essentially a very long line of professional and influential African-American people. And for some reason, the thought just crossed my mind. Why do blacks often feel compelled to tout our rich family history? Doctors, lawyers, educators, HBCU presidents. Now, while I was both proud of this guy's family's accomplishments and impressed, especially the part about his family's HBCU history, I love my HBCUs. I attended an HBCU and so did my dad. However, it almost seems as if we feel like it proves our worth, that our accomplishments help justify our being here, being in this country. It's as if we're saying that we belong here because we're significant contributors to society. And please don't misunderstand me. I get that and I applaud that. I get that. I do. But you know what? Those who self-identify as white don't have to do that. They feel they belong even if they're average. Even when they're dirt poor, they still feel worthy. And as sad and as unfortunate as it is, too many of them even feel superior. Let's take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Color Vision. Next, let's talk about economics. Let's follow the money. Show me the money. Well, I just heard that South Korea has faster internet speeds than the United States. We have 3G and 4G, but they're already into 5G territory. What's up with that? I think that part of it's because this country is built upon the premise of profit first, upon the premise of making money first and foremost. So America's two main focuses when it comes to technology or anything that might benefit the general public in this country, is it profitable first and foremost? Can I make money by making it? Because, hey, we're not going to support something unless we can make money from it, or unless it's something that will protect our money or keep us from losing money. Rarely, if ever, is America going to just support something or invest in something because it's altruistically positive or sincere or ethical, or just because it's quote unquote the right thing to do. This is a generalization, of course, but it seems as if there always has to be a profit motive in everything we do in America. Even those who make good things that will and do benefit mankind greatly are still most likely profit driven. Don't get it twisted. I recognize that this is the land of opportunity. I'm all for making a profit, no doubt. I also understand that it takes money to make money, just like it takes money to be generous. It takes money to be able to send the good news about my faith around the world. It takes money to be able to help third world countries, to be able to provide certain benefits to our own people. But this idea of being so 100 miles an hour driven by profit is something we need to consider about our society. The moral to the story is, let's put it into context of woke black folks. I read somewhere where Stephanie Mills said that today's music record labels don't want R&B from us, meaning African Americans, people of color. They want Adele. Don't get it twisted. I love Adele's music. All I'm saying is that maybe we need to focus less on crossover appeal, stop focusing so much on quote unquote pop appeal. I know that pop is the benchmark. I get it. I understand how every artist wants to reach the largest possible audience, to get the world to hear their art, and also sell more art as well. But maybe, just maybe, we need to revamp, regroup, rebrand R&B. Maybe have it just a little more like jazz. Of course, by default, you have smaller audiences, but maybe we would be able to retain more of, for lack of a better phrase, more of our blackness. I know this sounds painful. It is painful. But maybe, just maybe, this is the future. Mama, guess what that crazy man just said? It's time for a little political discourse. And that crazy man that I'm playfully, lightheartedly referring to while rolling my eyes is POTUS number 45. Call this a delayed reaction, but hey, if you're a brother or a sister and you actually had the unmitigated gall to vote for number 45, and especially if you still support him, you've put me in the middle of a moral dilemma, a bit of a quandary, a quagmire. You put me in a bad spot, brother, sister, even if you have now finally been awakened and you're now woke to white nationalism and systemic racism, racial bias, and even microaggression, not to mention xenophobia, misogyny, and bullying. Sorry, but I can't really trust you. You could be what the youngsters call a snitch. You could be a double agent. Or worst of all, you still may not have a clear understanding of why what you did was a mistake, which means that you really don't get the issue, which means that something deep down within you does not see number 45's pre and post-election words, behavior, and most of his policies as wrong. You're still asleep. Get at me when you get woke. And if I have to break it down for you in order for you to wake up, I would doubt the sincerity of your wokeness. Does not mean we can't exchange pleasantries, have a cup of coffee together, or exchange Christmas cards. Nor does it mean that I now see you as a quote-unquote enemy. I tell people all the time that you cannot afford to be a 1 or 2 issue voter. You are not operating on an even playing field with those who self-identify as white. I repeat, you are not operating on an even playing field with those who self-identify as white. You have to have a big picture view of politics and lawmaking. Yes, I get that you are, for the most part, only really siding with them on maybe 1 or 2 important issues. Maybe it's a faith-based issue. Maybe it's economics-based. But when it comes to the other dozens of issues that they stand for, that their platform stands for, way too often it actually undermines you. It undermines our people when all is said and done. You may even think you're getting brownie points from them, as it were, but trust me, you're not. Not trying to use too broad of brushstrokes here, but too many people on that side of the aisle are moral only when it's convenient. Otherwise, how would you account for the election of someone like number 45? Just think about it. The ancestors of some, not all, but some of those you align yourself with got rich off of enslaved Africans. How moral is that? That election was not about appointing a Supreme Court justice, because with a GOP-led Congress, that was going to happen regardless of which of the 17, 18 different candidates you actually elected. The moral to the story is, as a black man, as an African American, as a person of color, I am just tired of the whole race thing. I'm tired of white supremacy, tired of prejudice based on color or ethnicity. And truth be told, there are a majority of people out there who self-identify as white who actually say they agree with me. They too are tired of the race issue. However, they are not doing enough to change it when it's predominantly their own people, their mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, nieces, nephews, grandparents, etc., who are causing not all, but a lot of the problem, because they're the group with the power. They are the majority. So it has to come from them. It has to start with them. No, they didn't start slavery. Duh. No one alive today was a slave or a slave owner. However, systemic racism and racial bias still exist, and many would argue that it's increasing. Hey, we need to take another break. Hold on, we'll be right back. Let's talk about religion. Let's talk faith. I know that the word religion can be a turnoff to some people, so I like using the word faith or faith-based. And as always, I start this segment off by asking the question, is that in the Bible? How does the social, economic, political rhetoric that's making rounds around the major news organizations, how does it line up with what the good book says? And I use the Bible as my reference for this segment because A, that's what I'm comfortable with. B, a lot of the political discourse claims to be tied to the idea of Judeo-Christian values. And if those two reasons aren't good enough, at the end of the day, this is my show and I'm the captain of this ship. Back when I was like 22, I wanted to know why, in my opinion, men of color who share my same faith seemed to, for lack of a better word, be weak, while the leader of another faith, different from my own, seemed strong. I'm talking about the exterior image that he projected on TV and his words in print. They made him seem strong in my eyes. Nowadays, my question is, why do mega churches headed by African Americans and people of color have so few white parishioners? There's a big church in the Atlanta, Georgia area headed by a black man who is a household name in many black communities, but he only has like 10 white members. Out on the West Coast, there's a legendary preacher teacher known worldwide, but he only has like 7 white members. There's a brother in Dallas, Texas, who many high-profile African-American entertainers, athletes, and various high-profile people of color call their quote-unquote spiritual mentor, but he may have around 20, maybe. My question is, does all of this have to do with the Atlantic slave trade and the social construct of whiteness? So let me get this straight. Are you trying to tell me that in 2018, white people are still incapable of sitting under the leadership of a black pastor? Wow. This is like a side note, a tangent, but maybe it ties into this subject. Maybe it doesn't. But why did more young black comics use Richard Pryor as their example versus, say, Dick Gregory, Bill Cosby, or Flip Wilson? Maybe one reason is because Pryor had a gift for quote-unquote getting in white folks' faces with harsh realities. He could get them to take an introspective look at themselves, but also laugh at themselves. The moral to the story is the KKK, skinheads, and white nationalists of all ilks, the so-called alt-right, and the so-called values voters, who are mostly so-called evangelicals. Let me be clear to you so-called white evangelicals, who are supposed to be my brothers and sisters. Wow, if we are spiritually related, I'm not sure about that, but hey, we may need a DNA test, because the Bible compares hating someone to taking a life. When it comes to sports, I typically only rep my Dallas Cowboys before moving on. But for those of you who don't know, I also rep the San Antonio Spurs as well. And I'm very impressed that the Spurs have a quote-unquote woke head coach. Kudos. But hey, I'm still not feeling the NFL right now. For one, I'm still fuming over the fact that my Dallas Cowboys didn't make the playoffs. And I know that some of you want me to put the whole kneeling during the national anthem thing to rest, but I can't. Take, for instance, Jerry Jones, majority team owner of my beloved Cowboys. He very well may be willing to bench or fire or suspend players who disrespect the flag for kneeling during the national anthem. However, in years past, he's proven that he is more than willing to back and continue to hire certain players who've been accused of often horrendous crimes. So doesn't it sound hypocritical when any employer or organization says or tries to portray themselves as being extremely honorable and respectful, yet they would hire or continue to employ people who are violent toward women? Yet they think it's outrageous if one or two or perhaps a half dozen out of, say, 50 or 60 players on a team would kneel during the national anthem. The moral to the story is, I actually applaud athletes of color for trying to make as much money as they can while they can. I think the way things are going in this nation, maybe the right thing is for us to make as much money as we can, create as much wealth as we can, in order to put our children and grandchildren in the optimum positions to limit their interactions with law enforcement, to limit their interactions with employers or situations where they don't have as many options and are forced to, as it were, bow down to so-called white privilege or racial bias or microaggression in their daily lives. Now, don't get it twisted. I am a wholehearted believer in the idea that my faith is the great equalizer. However, perhaps we're just in a season of spiritual famine as a nation. Maybe we've been, as a people of color, too altruistic. Maybe it's time for us collectively to be more selfish, more self-centered, more focused on our wants, our needs, our futures, regardless of what other groups are doing. Let's take a quick break. Hold on. We'll be right back. I'm ready to shut this particular episode down, but I can't. Not yet. First, let's talk about entertainment. Last month was the month that we took to recognize and honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So it's always filled with different national, regional, and local activities. But I see that there are a couple of Black film festivals happening this month. I see that the Hollywood Black Film Festival is being held in Marina del Rey, California. And the Pan-African Film Festival is taking place in Los Angeles. If you don't already know, I'm not only an aspiring filmmaker who's written several screenplays, but I'm also a huge movie buff. So, hey, if you get a chance to attend either of these upcoming film festivals, hit us up and let us know how it went. As most of you know, I won't or I don't always get into some of the particulars, the nuances, the specific details of the 24-hour news cycle. I prefer to take a macro view of topics, the big picture view of topics, of this thing, this conglomeration we call life. This is why I really appreciate those talk shows, those journalists out there that share our vision, color vision. Those who spend their lives operating in the details, digging out the details for us, because those details are very important. I strongly encourage you to seek out those sources of news and information that are not only fact-checked, peer-reviewed, credibly sourced, but those that are able to see the world through our eyes with color vision. Yes, academic analysis and good research are important, but so is understanding what it feels like to be a person of color in America. Hey, we cannot rely on local or cable news to look out for our best interests. Again, the election of number 45 was a wake-up call. Well, hey, I'm out of time for this episode. But if you have a story to share or would like to suggest a topic that you would like for us to talk about, then please reach out to us on social media or visit our site at COLOURViz.com. Until next time, always remember that vision looks outward and becomes aspiration. Peace.